Hello, so my research paper is about the post-employment salaries of certain colleges, large school versus small schools. Basically, post-college employment, what you're going to get the best bang for your buck. The main purpose of this research paper is to really investigate the employment rates and median salary post-graduation of college students with bachelor degrees from large schools versus bachelor's degrees from smaller schools. Really, students, they choose to go to college for a plethora of reasons, whether it be for the social scene, to continue their athletic careers, or just because their parents are forcing them to. But really, at the end of the day, the primary reason students attend college is to receive a higher education and a degree that can assist them on landing a better employment opportunity. And college is so important because it gives people a better opportunity for long-term financial gain, job stability, career satisfaction, and success out of the workplace. So that was really the whole point of this research, was to really show these students what the best option is for them. Another thing that was taken into account is that many high school graduates focus their college search within 94 miles of home. So the point of this whole research was to be focused on comparing the employment benefits of large and small schools as a state-by-state basis. It also was hypothesized that smaller schools will offer the best odds of employment post-graduation, basically because having less enrolled bodies at the school boosts the odds of making more meaningful connections with professors and alumni. And for many jobs, this is heavily applicable to assume that it's not always about the grades that you receive, but about the hands you shake. So how was this research done? Basically, data was collected from 4 different states, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and New York, to represent the East Coast. 2 large schools and 2 small schools were chosen from each state. According to Carnegie Classification of Colleges and Universities, schools with more than 15,000 students are usually considered large schools, and then schools that are considered small schools have fewer than 5,000 students there. So that was the parameters that we also took in our research. So any school that was over 15,000 was considered large, and any school under 5,000 students was considered small. Researchers used the U.S. News of World Report to report the smallest and largest schools in each state. Whichever school came up first on that website that fit into the parameters of the size, those schools were used. So for example, New Jersey, top New Jersey universities were searched, and whichever school came up first, if it fit in with the 15,000 or the 5,000, that school was then used, and it was further investigated. The United States Department of Education of College, the College Scoreboard, was also used to find the number of students, the graduation rate, tuition per year, financial aid, and median salary 6 years after graduation. So all those parameters were also found on that website. Niche.com was also another website that was used to find the percentage of alumni employed 2 years after graduation. And basically all this raw data was put into Excel, and the averages and standard deviations were taken from each subcategory, and they were compared between the small and the large schools. In addition to that, a two-tailed unpaired t-test was also applied through Excel, and this gave a p-value that was then compared to another p-value, and this was needed to reject or accept the null hypothesis. To really see if there was a difference between large and small schools on graduates who were in the workforce, the average median salary 6 years after graduation was found. So if you can see in figure 1 right here, the average median salary are compared, and it is seen that small schools have a higher average median salary post-graduation than large schools, and also the standard deviation for the small schools is a lot greater than the large schools. The p-value that was calculated through Excel was 0.03, which was less than alpha of 0.05. As seen in Figure 2, when comparing large school versus small schools' average employment rate, 2 years after graduation, they are very, very similar. The average of large schools was around 93%, and the average of small schools was 94%. So the p-value showed that it was 0.6, which was greater than 0.05. Graduation rate was also taken to give insight into how many students are finishing their degrees in a timely manner once they enroll. So Figure 3 is showing the average graduation rate in percentage that are relative to large and small schools. These values are essentially the same, with large schools having an average graduation rate of 82% and small schools having an average graduation rate of 86%. As seen here, average net tuition, this was taken into account because the affordability of a college is very important when someone is considering deciding on what type of school they want to attend. The cost of a higher education can have long-term implications on one's life, so it's an important factor to consider when choosing a college. As seen here in Figure 4, smaller schools have a slightly higher net tuition when compared to larger schools. These values, they were taken into account of financial aid that the average financial aid given at each school. So what's really the whole point of this? What does it all mean? So when specifically looking at average mean salary 6 years after graduation, there is a difference because of the p-value. The p-value that was calculated was under 0.05, which is alpha. So we can assume that there is enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis and that there is a difference. This is also supported by additional research that has been done nationally. For example, according to the Center for Education and Workforce, it was reported that there are significant differences in the value of degrees earned from different kinds of universities. So, for example, researchers determined that the economic gains for attending a private nonprofit college are $838,000 versus public four-year institutions are $765,000. When examining tuition between small and large schools, there was not a statistical difference because of the high p-values, higher than 0.05. However, other research says the opposite. So according to the U.S. News and World Report, the average cost of tuition and fees for the 2021 school year was $43,000 at private colleges and $28,000 for out-of-state students at public schools and $11,000 for state residents at public colleges. When determining graduation rate between large and small schools, there was not a significant difference between the graduation rates because of the high p-value. However, again, other research says otherwise. According to Value Colleges, in 2017, private institutions had an average graduation rate around 55% versus public institutions had an average graduation rate of 38%. So this was also supported by other research that there is a difference. Overall, it was shown statistically that there was not enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis when it came to comparing school size for graduation rate, employment rate, and tuition. One can conclude that these factors are the same, however, with other research done, they aren't. So the sample size was looked at, and since the sample size was only 16 schools, in reality the sample size should be 10% of the population. So since the sample size is so small, it doesn't fully represent the whole population well, and that can be concluded why the results don't match other literature experiments. A confounding variable that was also shown was the location of the school. The location of the school can have a very big difference on how many students go there and who wants to go there. So this was another variable that was looked at. Thank you so much for listening to my research presentation, and I hope you find this very interesting.